Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your boy Sorrels of the Jobbeteers podcast, and we're back for another episode of Coffee Talk with Friends. And I got another friend here. This man has been shit talking across the Twitter webs. He was on an episode of the Jobbeteers podcast just recently, and we all know him as Alfred. Such a simple name, but such a great man. Yo, welcome back. Welcome back to the Jobbeteers universe, brother.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I had a lot of fun last time with you guys, and I'm very excited to be here with you, Sir Wilkins.
All right, first things first. This show is all about your opinions, your thoughts. I just want to ask some questions, and you just tell me what you think. But we got to talk about the magnitude of this past weekend in professional wrestling. I'm talking about Rampage, and I'm talking about SummerSlam. What are your thoughts about CM Punk coming back to professional wrestling? And what are your thoughts about SummerSlam?
Well, it was just all around a great weekend of wrestling. There was a lot of excitement leading up to it because we knew CM Punk was coming back. We knew it was going to be this big SummerSlam with 40,000 plus people in the building, and it did not disappoint. I was at SummerSlam Live, had a tremendous time there, and I saw the CM Punk debut the night before, obviously in the hotel room, and I thought it was almost as good as being there live, which is crazy to say because, I'm sure the people who were there live, there was a whole nother level, but I'm just saying it's that good of a moment in terms of seeing this. CM Punk is one of those big gets in terms of the last of people who you never thought would come back to wrestling. It was Sting going to WWE and CM Punk coming back, period, were the two things that it's like you never really thought you would see. Mm-hmm. And it just both happened in the last couple of years. And I just thought it was such a great moment. They handled it perfectly in terms of just starting the show. I thought they were going to build to it. And at the end, you get CM Punk. But looking at it in hindsight, this is exactly how they should have done it. He comes out, he gets to cut a promo for as long as he wants. He has this great emotional moment with all these fans. And I just thought he looked like an absolute superstar. And this is a great way to roll him out.
So what do you think about how they should book him moving forward? He is their, golden goose, so to say. Right. He is their mega superstar that's on their roster, the blockbuster superstar. Some people can argue. So how would you book him? You got the pencil. How would you book him?
I think so far they're doing exactly what I would have done it because before he even came to AEW, when that was just a germ of an idea, that one guy I always thought he should feud with is Darby Allin. Mm-hmm. I think if anything, they're doing this too early in that, yes, it's a first opponent, and I have no problem with Darby being his first opponent, but they're only going to have like 3 weeks to build this thing up. And I think that creatively, you give these guys a month, maybe a month and a half, a couple of months to tell a real story. That would be an incredible feud. And I think it still will. I think the things that they can do with each other and promo wise are going to be good. The thing that I think it's lacking is that this is like a mutual respect storyline. It's like CM Punk saying, I want to work with the young guys, and Darby, I see a lot of potential in you and I want to work with you, brother. I kind of want to see CM Punk in a messy feud, in something where it's like they're going back and forth. That's why if I had the pencil, his next feud would be against Colt Cabana. That's just me being messy. All right. It's a guy he can beat without people getting mad. It's a guy who he has real life tensions with. I mean, these guys, I'm hoping that they solved whatever problems they had, but they went through a very messy, they're best of friends, thick as thieves. He shouted out Colt Cabana in his most famous moment, his famous promo, and now they're kind of on the out. So I would like to see where they're at there, and that'd be a fun feud. And then also MJF, I think, would be a lot of fun. If there's one guy who's going to get to tell that elusive joke about CM Punk getting his ass kicked in MMA and UFC, MJF is going to have the bars for that, and I think it's going to lead to some great promos.
Nah, I can definitely see MJF and CM Punk going back because they're very much character-wise the opposite. You have the rich kid, he's from whatever he's from, great lifestyle, and then you have CM Punk, the anti-hero, the kid coming from the mud. I can definitely see them doing something phenomenal. Now, you spoke about how you were at SummerSlam Live. Talk a little bit about that experience that it was, especially that fans are officially back. And that was probably their biggest event with fans.
Yeah. And it was it looked like it. It was a filled building, a sold out building in the Allegiant Stadium. And I thought it was just, I can't wait to go because it's in Vegas, so not too far from me. And I was already going to go there for some Raiders games. Not that I'm a Raiders fan, but it's a beautiful stadium. When the Packers come to beat the crap out of the Raiders, I'll go to that. But I thought it was just a great production. I thought it was so fun to be there. The stadium was mic'd very nicely. I would get texts from my brother was watching at home and he would be like, oh man, the crowd kind of seems dead for certain parts. And they weren't. And it was just a very lively crowd. There was a section of the show after Bianca Belair lost where they were dead and kind of deflated and whatnot. But in terms of when you heard big pops for that show, it was just thunderous, and it was just a really fun show from a spectacle standpoint. I think if I would have watched it from home, maybe I wouldn't have enjoyed it.
You were saying that there was some dead parts, and that was the Bianca Belair part. Like, speak more about that one, because everybody was just like, yo, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, that was very deflating. For such a hot stadium, like, this was a special moment. Becky Lynch coming back and facing off with Bianca Belair, and it was so crazy because it went from being a potentially disastrous moment where they announced Carmella, and there was not one CM Punk chant on that show, but when Carmella and Bianca Belair were about to mix it up, you could almost hear them clearing their throats to start chanting CM Punk, and it just started chanting the wildest stuff. And then, so they're at a low, and then here comes Becky Lynch. So they go back up to a high. And then Becky Lynch says, why don't we tear this house down? So now, this place is at a fever pitch. Like, oh my God, we're about to get Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch. Let's go. And then it goes right back to a low, and it's even lower than when you thought, man, in hindsight, I would have rather seen Carmella versus Bianca Belair if this is what they were going to do. So I just thought this was terrible in terms of what they did to Bianca Belair. Becky Lynch started to get really booed. I don't know if they turned it down or whatnot, but Becky Lynch in that stadium started to get booed, and they had to kind of cut out from that segment toward the end of it. And clearly this is what they want, because there's reports that she's turning heel, but I thought this was not the way to do it, and I hated everything about this.
Why did you hate everything about it?
Because, okay, first of all, Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch, in that they are going to have this big match, and that's what was kind of advertised and promised in terms of beforehand, and it just ending this quickly. And it sticks with me because there is now a term for when a black person loses a championship in a matter of seconds. We have a precedent for this. Bianca Belair was Kofi'd. Okay, like, we now have a term for these title reigns, and it's not just anybody. Like, not all title reigns are created equal. Like, Bianca Belair made history to get that title. First all black women WrestleMania main event, she wins that title. So it was more than just a fake title reign. Kofi Kingston, first African-born WWE champion, just loses unceremoniously to Brock Lesnar. And maybe I was triggered. Maybe it just brought up memories like that. But it was just the entire stadium was looking for something special, and we thought we were going to get a special moment. And to have that go down like that really just deflated everything. Like, everybody in that stadium was just like, huh. And you could feel that for the next couple of matches, one of which had Drew McIntyre, one of their biggest stars. They didn't react at all to that match. And people were just very deflated following that decision. I didn't think that was the right way to go.
Let me ask you a quick question, because somebody mentioned this in an article. They were like, how WWE is going a different direction, and how, all their champions are heels, this and that. But I'm also realizing that across the board, most promotions, their champions are the heels. Yeah. Do you think that being a babyface superstar is dead in this modern era of wrestling?
No, not at all. You could argue one of the biggest stars, if not the biggest star right now in AEW, is Darby Allin, and he's a babyface.
But he's not a champion.
Right. No, that's a good point. But, I would think babyfaces would be dead if there were no effective babyfaces, because it's only a matter of time, and there are only so many titles to give away. I think in WWE, they don't know how to book babyfaces. They don't do a very good job booking babyfaces. So maybe there is that out there, that they're just so focused on getting heat that all the heels have the titles. So you've got this dominant run with Bobby Lashley, with Roman Reigns, with now Becky Lynch, who's going to be a heel. Ironically enough, I thought Bianca Belair was like the last of a dying breed in terms of a babyface who they just got right. They didn't really screw up Bianca Belair. And that's another reason I hated this, is she's built as this superstar, almost a superhero, the roughest, the toughest, the quickest, and then she loses in a matter of seconds, which really kind of hurts that mystique. So I don't know if the babyface is dead yet. They're not champions right now. I just think it's a lot easier in wrestling, especially modern day wrestling, to create the scenario where the babyface has to chase that title.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That makes sense. I like that, the way you came off on that one. Couple of questions when the coffee talk questions are coming along. What are you loving in wrestling right now, currently?
Well, we kind of talked about this off air. The competition in wrestling, I just love this. I love that it doesn't feel like there's any complacency. And that's the biggest difference with having two major companies going at the same time and kind of heating up at the same time. And a company in AEW that is really getting closer and closer to appearing like WWE's peer. When WWE was just alone, there's almost this arrogance where they could do whatever they want, they book whatever they want. And, you're just going to kind of have to take it. It wasn't as good for the wrestlers because there weren't two places to work. So they're not going to make as much money. And just from a standpoint of a viewer watching these two companies bring out the best in each other, because I don't think we're getting Brock Lesnar rolled out at the end of SummerSlam, which I thought was a great moment, if we don't get CM Punk. So it's WWE having to counter AEW and the other way around. I think the best thing in wrestling is this competition. It's created a completely different, and part of that is the fact that we're back from the pandemic. So there are now fans in the stands. So there's still a newness to that. But I think also there is this electricity in the wrestling business that there is all this competition that I think is making it better.
Nah, I love it. I love it. I think this is something that wrestling needs. Competition breeds greatness. And maybe a part of me is thinking that Vince is rubbing his hands like Birdman, like, yeah, we got some competition. It's time to step it up. Because I'm hearing that Brock wasn't supposed to happen until not next year's WrestleMania, but the following WrestleMania. And they moved it up. Becky was supposed to come in October. So they're pulling out the big guns. This is an arms race right now. And personally, us wrestling fans are being treated very well of watching all this great wrestling being put on television. So we talked about the good. So, of course, we got to be petty and talk about the bad. What are you currently not liking or even hating in professional wrestling right now?
Well, it's funny. The same thing that I kind of do like. I will praise AEW, but the lack of black excellence at the top of AEW is something that we kind of talk about. I'm not going to stop talking about that. It is very bothersome to me that, okay, it's great that they're doing all this great booking and pro wrestling and whatnot, but I think part of that just makes me more envious that they just can't seem to find a way to piece together the ingredients to make a black talent, which they have plenty of, 16 black wrestlers on their roster. You can't tell me that, it's just going to take time, just got to wait. I mean, I think it's their choice in terms of who they want to push, who they want to book. And you're just seeing one generation after another in terms of on the way, guys who aren't even in AEW right now. You look at Adam Cole, you look at Daniel Bryan, potentially Bray Wyatt. It's like, it's starting to get to the point, especially with Adam Cole, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, Kenny Omega, where it's almost like too much of a good thing. It's like, do we need all four of these guys in this promotion? Aren't they kind of appealing to that same audience and overlapping each other? I'm sure the matches and the storytelling are going to be great, but for a company that prided itself, they went to Complex, they went to Washington Post, and they touted they're going to be the diverse company, and just how white this company is at the top in the plum spots and how little is made of it, I think initially, was really bothersome to me. And I just think that they need to do better and do right by more of their talent.
I think you're definitely right about that. It's weird because I thought the same thing. I was like, they got mad dope people about to come on that roster. You're going to push it down a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And this history repeats itself. I'm a history major and I went to school for history, and history definitely repeats itself. And we're seeing a little bit of what WCW did, taking all those major talents, bringing them over, and then the people who were already there not getting the love that they felt that they deserve. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think Tony Khan's a smart man. I think he'll fix something up. But when it comes to the diversity thing that you mentioned, I'm just like, bro, like you have enough talent there. You can put the belt on somebody or actually have them in competition. I hated the fact that I think I was the only person that hated this, the squash match between Kiera Hogan and Jade. I thought it should have been a whole lot more. I know they wanted to show how strong Jade was, but you have Kiera Hogan, who's a star in Impact. How about you start building her up and adding another layer to your very unlayered women's division? But that's just how he likes to book his shit. So let's move on. I always like to finish off the show with something really hot and spicy.
Yeah.
So, what is your hot coffee take of the day?
My hot coffee take of the day. Okay, this is very interesting. I've been kind of thinking about this. I think. Okay, here's my hot take, a quote unquote hot take. I don't think AEW is as close to WWE as people think in terms of whether it's not even overtaking. I know everybody knows they're not going to overtake them. But I think there's this misdirection in terms of people thinking that, AEW is close. Here they come. They got 1 million on Friday nights and they're doing this. And they definitely have momentum on their side. And WWE, if they screw around, they are liable to get passed up by AEW. But I think that is years away. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think we're ever going to see a universe where AEW surpasses WWE in terms of viewership, even consistently in that 18 to 49 demo, which is where they are kind of eating into WWE's audience. I just do think that things are going to have to change with WWE for better or for worse. And I think that WWE is in a transitional period right now where they're trying to figure themselves out, figure out what their roster needs moving forward. And hopefully they're going to learn to stop being so reliant on these part-timers. But I do think that, WWE is eventually going to reload. There's eventually going to come a time where AEW free agency starts up, and these AEW guys are going to start jumping ship to WWE, and I think they're going to get at least one of these big fish in AEW, whether it's MJF, whether it's Darby Allin, whether it's Orange Cassidy. WWE is going to throw a lot of money at one of these guys, and I think multiple of these AEW guys are going to WWE inside of a couple of years.
You're the first person I've heard say that. You are the first person I heard that said that there's going to be a jump from AEW to WWE. And I thought the same thing just recently because I said history repeats itself. History definitely repeats itself. So what you said, you mentioned MJF, and you know what's funny? MJF did say he wouldn't mind going to WWE. Supposedly he said that in an interview where it was like, if the money's right, and he knows that the top guys right now in WWE don't have much time left, so he wouldn't mind jumping over and being that top guy. So I don't know. Did you see that Nick Kahn interview?
Yes, I did. I saw it a couple times actually.
What did you think about it, first of all, overall, about the interview?
Very interesting. He's very good at these interviews, and I mean that in that he's very protective. He says a lot without saying a lot. Like, he's a perfect WWE guy because WWE is like the mafia. They don't want you really talking too much about what's going on in the inner workings. So he answered the question, but he kept a lot to the vest, but I did kind of glean a lot of how he thinks business-wise. He's a very sharp executive. I like a lot of his strategies, like even the day one thing that they're doing in Atlanta. That's a great strategy. And the day after New Year's, people want to do something. They usually go to a college football game, so he's kind of taking that void in Atlanta, which is a college football territory, and I think that's going to draw pretty well at State Farm Arena.
I'm thinking about going, actually.
That'd be dope. I want to go. I'm long term. I want to buy a house in Atlanta. At the very least, have an investment property there, and that'd be a great excuse to go to Atlanta.
I'm low key want to go. What do you think about what he said that they're going to revamp NXT? How would you revamp NXT? That's another question that I have. So it's a 2-part question I just asked you. What do you think about him saying about revamping NXT, and how would you revamp NXT?
I think it's very interesting in that, there's a lot going on in NXT in terms of them just kind of gutting the product, Triple H seemingly losing power in there, and it's more of Vince McMahon's vision of what he thinks wrestling should be. And the revamp is probably going to center around like the bigger guys. I mean, I think people are a little bit too scared of that whole big man thing because a lot of the smaller guys, we just saw Carmelo Hayes, who's like half the size of Odyssey Jones, win that NXT breakout tournament. So I think it's interesting that Nick Khan's saying that they're going to revamp NXT. I don't think that's so much Triple H's decision as it is Vince McMahon and Nick Khan. And I'm not very excited about it because I think it's going to be a watered down version. Adam Cole is gone. A lot of these top guys are gone. There's not as much, but I do like the Hit Row is there, and Legado del Fantasma, so they have the pieces. If I were to build up NXT, I would build it around the Hit Rows, Legado del Fantasma. A lot of these kind of up and coming stars who didn't get as much run during the old era. I think Odyssey Jones is going to be a superstar. I would do a slow play for him to go. I would build. Here's the number one feud I would build if I was revamping NXT. I would put Odyssey Jones on a winning streak. I don't want to see this guy lose for another year. And I would keep Samoa Joe as NXT champion through the end of the year. And then at the end of the year, you got Odyssey Jones and Samoa Joe, those two big bulls going at it. And Samoa Joe would know how to make that work. And Odyssey Jones by then, I think he's a tremendous athlete and a guy who's probably still going to be quote unquote green by then, but still going to be able to have a good match. And I think Samoa Joe and Odyssey Jones as a money feud, I would slow play that. That's what my number one priority would be if I was booking NXT.
No, I like that idea. You know what's interesting is that wrestlers aren't really that big, and people don't know that. How tall are you?
6'2".
You might be bigger than most wrestlers that's on TV right
I will say I don't want any heat for this, but I went to the W after party and I was, there were some big wrestlers. Don't get me wrong, but there were a lot of people who I was like, man, I thought that guy was so much bigger.
So I know somebody that's done a lot of work with WWE, and he's about your height, like 6'2", 6'3", and he was telling me, it's like he's bigger than most of the wrestlers. Like, for instance, what is it? The announcer, is it Greg Hamilton?
Yes, Greg Hamilton.
He has to step back. I don't know if you ever see, like, when they show a wrestler come into the ring, how they position Greg Hamilton further back so he doesn't look taller than the wrestlers from the camera stand when the camera's like looking at them. So a lot of wrestlers I'm 5'10", and the way I'm built is probably like what most wrestlers are built.
Right.
And it's interesting how people think, how we all think they're like larger than like 6'5", 6'6". I remember I bumped into Malachi Black or Aleister Black. He was by MSG. He's my height, almost, maybe an inch taller than me.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, and a lot of them, because we are in an era where in the '80s they were all just monsters, and now it is a lot of smaller guys, especially in AEW. A lot of these smaller guys who
AEW, there's a reason why. I don't know if you ever heard because Andrade spoke about this when Andrade went up against Drew McIntyre for the NXT title and he had won it. It was supposed to be Adam Cole that was supposed to win it. But they didn't want Adam Cole to go up against Drew McIntyre because it was such a huge size difference. And it wouldn't make any sense of him dropping the title to Adam Cole. So they put Andrade into that position. And my homegirl met Adam Cole. Homegirl's like 5'7", maybe 5'8". She's either his height or a little bit taller.
Wow. So
I understand when they say these guys are vanilla midgets, and it's no disrespect because Adam Cole is extremely talented across the board, but he is a small guy.
And that stood out. Because when he super kicked Drew McIntyre that night, like Drew McIntyre had to get that like a dad, like fighting his kid, get down on one knee and like bend over to get that super kick.
Yeah, it's super interesting because we, like you said, we think that there's somebody larger than life characters, but then when you meet in person, you're like, oh, you're like regular height. And also remember that a lot of them put lifts in their boots, so that the soles of their shoes are like this, like another inch or two. Like if I ever like wrestle, I'm putting the thickest soles. I'm 6'1", baby. I am 6'1" out in these shoes. Like I'm wearing Timbs.
Yeah. You should do that. Yeah, shout out to Shad Gaspar.
Rest in peace to him. Rest in peace.
Yo, rest in power.
Bro, thank you so much for coming on another episode of Coffee Talk with Friends. Let us know where we can find you on social media real quick.
Absolutely. Always fun to talk to you. Find me on Twitter at This Is Nasty. Pro Wrestling Bits on YouTube. Got some interviews with WWE superstars right now. Got a new bit dropping tomorrow that's probably going to rile some people up. And, I'm just out here living, go on Forbes, go on Wrestling Inc. and watch me on Tuesday, Wednesdays, Fridays.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, this was another episode of Coffee Talk with Friends with Sir Wilkins and the homie. But this time we brought in Alfred. Miss Nasty.
Nasty.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out.